Well, obviously, it was previously reported there was some incidents of some poor driving and some hoon-like behaviour on Friday night, and police responded to that. And in the process of our response to that, a bottle was thrown through the window of a police car. So we did receive word and information through social media that we could expect a repeat of that style of behaviour on Saturday night. So we mounted a small operation to deal with that, and we did see a repeat, or an attempted repeat, of that style of behaviour, both on Lonsdale Street, shortly afterwards there in Fyshwick, later on out in Hume, and there was an attempt to perform the similar type of behaviour out at Eaglehawk, but that was thwarted by the New South Wales Police.
Were police vehicles again damaged? Was there threats made to police? Is that what you're alleging?
Not on this occasion. There was no damage to police vehicles, but it was disappointing to see that once again a certain cohort of the crowd thought it was okay to abuse the police and that sort of thing, not really comply with our directions. And we gave some reasonably firm directions about what we did and didn't want people to do, and people ignored that and gathered in large crowds. There were some burnouts, there were some vehicles seized, so it was quite disappointing to see that behaviour continued despite the information that was given out on Friday night, and despite people's in the community's awareness of our displeasure with that sort of behaviour.
Is anyone being charged, or infringement notices or defect notices or anything like that?
At this stage, two vehicles were seized on Saturday night, and so the drivers of those vehicles will be prosecuted for the relevant offences. They were conducting burnouts, and those vehicles will be seized and held in accordance with legislation. But we're also continuing to investigate the episodes of Friday night. We've received a number of reports and information through Crime Stoppers from members of the public in relation to identifying offenders involved in that, and the people who are involved in that can expect to be receiving a visit from us at some stage soon.
Is it a case where it's a small number of people who perhaps spoiled the gathering for the vast majority? You're probably just doing the right thing, just looking at some cards?
Well, I wouldn't really say it's a small number of people. There was up to 1,000 people out at Canberra Avenue and Fyshwick on Saturday night. So there was a large group of people. There's a dedicated group of people who are what I would call genuine car enthusiasts in the ACT, who are very proud of the vehicles, the show vehicles they have, and want to show them off to the public. And then there's a collection of people who think that their driving abilities exceed, or their expectations of their driving ability well and surely exceeds what they can actually do, and who think they live in an episode of Fast and the Furious and think it's okay to take over city streets and perform dangerous road manoeuvres, and they're the people that concern us, not the genuine enthusiasts. The genuine enthusiasts are people we support and work closely with, but it's a cohort of people who coordinate themselves and gather through social media in deliberate attempts to, as I said, take over public streets and perform dangerous road manoeuvres.
Do you think not having summon acts during this year has contributed to these people organising their own sort of private?
Well, that's the sort of stuff that's been going around social media, but that would indicate to me that people are very, very short-sighted about it. Just the absence of an event doesn't justify the behaviour. But the analogy I always use, there's a number of boxing rings in the ACT, but people still fight outside of boxing rings. So to use the excuse of the fact there's no summonats on to justify this sort of behaviour is childish. It's very immature.
We do see this sort of behaviour happen almost every year, though, around Summonats time. Is it surprising to police?
It was surprising in the sense this year that because there was no organised Summonats event, so we didn't expect this sort of thing. And there is a group of people in the ACT that we're well aware of, and we track and we monitor and investigate, who do conduct these sorts of illegal activities on a regular basis. But the nature and the size of it caught us quite by surprise here, because it wasn't something we'd expect. When Summonats is on, we roster and apply our resources accordingly, but on this occasion it was just what we would have considered a normal Saturday night, but then had to deploy further resources to deal with for what we were faced because of the behaviour on Friday night.
Are we talking about ACT individuals, or is it a mix, or anybody from New South Wales?
Well, if you look on social media, you'll see a mix of number plates there for both ACT, New South Wales and even some other jurisdictions. So it's fair to say that when we say ACT, we're talking a pretty broad geographic area here, so ACT and southern New South Wales. So there would have been some people from the local area outside the ACT attracted to these sort of events, and that's what we saw.
What's the message to those car enthusiasts out there who you do liaise with regularly, those people who do just go out and do the right thing? Is there a message from police about how they should conduct themselves going forward, and what they can do to discourage, I guess, this sort of behaviour from their peers?
Well, the message that we would send those people is just keep doing what you're doing. You know, we appreciate the liaison we have with you, and it makes their events run smoother. It allows us to keep the city streets safe and clear, and so that everybody else who's not involved in those sort of activities isn't affected. So we'd urge those people to continue doing what they're doing, and we really appreciate their efforts. But at the same time, we'd expect some information to circulate amongst the motoring community that what is and what isn't acceptable, and how the actions of a not an insignificant group of people are actually affecting the good intentions of other people who are trying to do the right thing, and they're spoiling it for them.
How close do it come to people being injured or hurt?
Well, if you watch the social media of this thing, you'll see people doing burnouts surrounded by vehicles within touching distance, and all that has to happen is that vehicle gains traction for a millisecond, and all of a sudden you're going to have 5 or 6 people run over, serious injuries and possible death. So it's you see videos like that, and it makes me think that things like common sense aren't really that common, or isn't really that common. People standing around and those sorts of things, and we've seen this happen in years past. We saw a recent tragic incident in Wellington and New South Wales around the poor driving of a vehicle and the ramifications of that. We've seen incidents happen across Australia and around the world where people have driven vehicles in irresponsible manners, and that's led to injury and death of people who aren't even involved in it. But to actually actively insert yourself in a situation where a vehicle's doing a burnout and you're standing there right in front of the vehicle, it boggles the mind.
And this does happen every year, as we mentioned, just around summer nats, and we've even seen some sort of street racing type stuff throughout this year. Do we need tougher hoon laws?
Well, I don't think the laws, we necessarily need tougher hoon laws. We just need people to start following them, and people to just grow up a bit and start acting like adults, acting like mature adults. To see the ages of some of the people who are involved in these sorts of things, you think really some of you just have to grow up a bit. And the laws are there not just to suit police or other people uninvolved. The laws are there to protect everybody, and we want everybody to be able to enjoy our safe streets. And these people are actually, through their selfishness, are actually affecting the way other people are able to conduct themselves on our streets.
And people who are caught doing things like burnouts and dangerous driving, what are some of the penalties they could face?
Well, they can expect significant fines, either through a traffic infringement notice or coming before the court. And they can also expect their vehicles to be seized. And what I'd particularly like to emphasise with young people, that those sorts of things go down on your record. And the very stupid and immature actions that you might do as a young person can actually affect the rest of your life, your employment prospects, your ability to get a job, your ability to move to other countries and things like that. So people really need to have a good hard think and a good hard look at themselves before they do stupid things like this.
Can we expect a much tougher police response as a repetition of these?
Well, people can expect the police to respond accordingly, that we will deal with the situation as the legislation allows us to do, and we'll act within that legislation and deal with it firmly and as quickly as we can. There's going to be no aggressive campaign against these people or anything like that, but if we're presented with situations such as this, then we will act accordingly.
Will the police be monitoring social media?
Yes, we'll be monitoring social media, and people should be aware of that we know the people who are doing these sorts of things. We've seen their videos, and when they put them up on social media, they give us a date, time and a place where the offence is committed, so it's not particularly smart.
Do you feel you had police adequately pre-deployed for this sort of situation?
On Saturday night, I think we did. We were aware of what was going to happen, and or we expected what we expected to happen, and we were able to gather resources to deal with that. On Friday night, it was a situation we didn't expect, and we were able to quickly gather resources to try and deal with the situation, but it was a large crowd, and our regular patrol strengths meant we were effectively outnumbered. But on Saturday night we were able to gather together a larger amount of people and actually re-divert them from other duties, which people need to understand, that when we are deploying police to things like this, we're taking them away from other important things we're doing, such as COVID compliance or such as just policing a busy Saturday night in Canberra.
Were you intel gathering prior to Friday and Saturday night on social media and things of that nature?
I'm not aware we're doing anything prior to Friday night, but obviously with the activities of Friday night and the prominence and the awareness that people gained of it, then it wasn't too hard to gather information about what was proposed for Saturday night. And then obviously we were sending people out to various parts of the ACT to see what was going on beforehand, and also had a close liaison with the New South Wales Police.
Do you feel that police have got enough powers
I
in
think-
these situations?
Yeah, I think at the present time, I think we have enough powers. I mean, other jurisdictions have different powers, but I think the most important message to have is, irrespective of what the powers of the police that have, that people just obey the law. It's not a hard thing to do. As I said, there's common sense doesn't appear to be that common amongst a certain cohort of people that they think that they can treat the roads as their own personal racetrack, and they can't.
New South Wales has car crushing powers in these situations. What's your view of that?
I don't have a particular view either way. As I said, my key message to people would be, irrespective of what the laws and the ramifications are, we expect people to just follow them.
So you won't be caught off guard again?
Well, I mean, policing is a business that goes 24/7, 365, and we can't prepare for every single contingency. We do our very best to prepare for contingencies as they present themselves. We gather intelligence, we speak to our communities, and when people do organise events, they speak to us about it. But it's when people organise, loosely organised events, that outside of our knowledge that problems are created. So, as I said, we're more than happy to work with the car enthusiast community in the ACT when they have organised events, and we're more than happy to help them run those events successfully. But obviously when we have events that we don't expect, it can catch us a little off guard at times, but we are able to quickly and effectively gather resources to deal with it.
Do you have a view on whether these people, whether they're hoons or whether they're enthusiast drag racers or whatever, should have a regulated facility here in the ACT for people to do these sorts of things in safety and without intervention of police?
Well, I have no particular opinion either way on whether there should be a regulated facility, but the absence of a regulated facility doesn't justify the behaviour of people. As I said, there's a number of boxing rings in the ACT, but people continue to fight outside of boxing rings. So I think to use the excuse of not having a regulated facility to justify the behaviour is quite juvenile.